Empty your pockets. Find 2 pennies. At a glance, they are identical twins, but drop them. The first rings out bright and clear like a tiny cathedral bell. The second, it lands with a flat, hollow thud. That sound is the death of a resonance. In the early 80s, a silent transition occurred at the US Mint. Before this shift, every coin was a dense 95% copper relic. After they became zinc time capsules wrapped in a whisper-thin copper shell. On paper, it was a move to save the economy. In reality, it was the systematic removal of a specific frequency from our daily lives. Copper isn't just metal. It's a conductor. It's an alchemical bridge. When you scratch the surface of a modern penny, the silver-gray truth of zinc reveals itself. This isn't just a change in currency. It's a chemistry lesson disguised as spare change. But here is where the story darkens. Decades ago, a visionary named Justin Christofleau explored a suppressed science called Electro-Culture. He understood that the Earth is a living battery, and copper was the key to unlocking its power. He built terrestrial devices that could supposedly triple harvests without a single drop of fertilizer. By replacing the solid copper core with zinc, we didn't just lose metal, we lost the components of a forgotten machine. When you place these 2 different eras of coinage together in moist soil, you aren't just burying money, you are building a galvanic battery. The interaction between the copper skin and the zinc heart creates a micro-pulse, a tiny electrical heartbeat that signals the soil to wake up. If you want to witness this lost technology for yourself, follow the protocol. First, find a penny dated before 1982, your copper source. Second, take a modern penny and sand the edge until the silver-zinc core is exposed. Third, place them 3 inches apart in the soil of a struggling plant, connected by a simple copper wire. You are no longer just a gardener. You are an operator of a suppressed electromagnetic circuit. We were told the change was about the rising price of copper. But as you listen to that dull zinc thud, ask yourself, was it the value of the metal they wanted to save or the power of the resonance they wanted to silence? Look closely at what's in your hand. The truth has been hiding in plain sight, jingling in your pocket, waiting for someone to finally hear the difference. Drop a penny on a table. Listen closely. If it rings with the clear, bright tone of a tiny bell, you're holding history. Anything minted before 1981 is solid copper. But if you hear a flat, hollow thud, that's 1982. In that year, the recipe changed. The system swapped wealth for a whisper-thin copper shell, hiding a dull zinc core inside. Most people saw it as a budget cut. But for those who know the language of energy, they didn't just change the currency. They left a galvanic battery in every pocket. A chemistry lesson disguised as spare change. Zinc and copper. One for the anode, one for the cathode. This isn't just pocket change. It's the blueprint for a forgotten revolution led by a man named Justin Christofleau. Christofleau wasn't a fringe tinkerer. By the 1920s, he was a gold medalist of the French National Society of Agriculture. While the rest of the world was chasing the roar of gasoline and the burn of coal, Christofleau was listening to the silence of the soil. He believed the earth was alive with a subtle, invisible electricity. And if he could harness it, he could feed the world without a single drop of chemical fertilizer. He called it the electromagnetic terrestrial device. Imagine a wooden pole rising from the garden like an antenna. At the top, a zinc basin shaped like a shallow bowl. Above that, a flat copper plate positioned to catch the faint electrical signature of the atmosphere. When these 2 metals are connected through damp earth, they create a natural circuit. A steady, gentle trickle of current that stimulates the roots and awakens the soil. It wasn't just theory. Christofleau's 1927 Swiss patent CH118648A laid it all out. He built the prototypes. He tested them in his own fields. By the late 1930s, over 150,000 of these devices were standing guard over farms across Europe. No wires, no external power, no recurring costs. Just the right metals placed in the right way, letting nature do the heavy lifting. The system eventually moved on. Chemicals became the new gold, and Christofleau's copper-zinc towers were dismantled and forgotten. But the components never left us. They're still there, sitting at the bottom of your cup holder or buried in your couch cushions. To recreate the Christofleau protocol, the logic is simple. Group your metals. Use the pre-1982 pennies for your copper source and the post-1982 coins for your zinc. Space them near the roots of your plants. When the soil gets damp, the battery activates. It's a tiny electrical pulse, a reminder of a time when we didn't just exploit nature, we tuned into it. Next time you hear that flat thud of a modern penny, don't just see it as cheap metal. See it as a key. Scratch the surface and the truth comes out. Drop a penny from 1981 on a marble table. It rings a clear, sharp bell that echoes with copper's signature tone. Now drop one from 1983. A flat thud. A hollow, dead sound. In 1982, the US Mint didn't just change the recipe for pocket change. They buried a secret. They replaced solid copper with a zinc core wrapped in a whisper-thin shell. Most call it inflation. But if you look closer, it looks more like a global withdrawal of the very materials needed for a lost revolution. Scratch the surface and the truth comes out. You see, copper and zinc aren't just metals. Together they form a galvanic battery, a bridge for the silent energies of the earth. And decades before the copper penny was hollowed out, a man named Justin Christofleau used these exact elements to rewrite the laws of biology. In 1927, Christofleau didn't offer theories. He offered blueprints. Under Swiss patent CH118648A, he documented a world that sounds like science fiction today. Oat fields producing 200% more grain, potatoes yielding 35 tubers per plant instead of 5, beans tripling their output in the middle of a drought. This wasn't chemistry, it was electro-culture. Christofleau's device was deceptively simple: a zinc basin and a copper plate. No wires, no external power, just a terrestrial antenna catching the electromagnetic pulse of the atmosphere and feeding it into the soil. The world took notice. By the late 1930s, more than 150,000 units were humming in fields across Europe. Factories in France and Belgium ran at full tilt, stamping Christofleau's name onto thousands of devices. Farmers reported vegetables so massive they had to be carried with 2 hands. It was a harvest powered by the earth itself, cheap, infinite, chemical-free. But then the trail goes cold. As quickly as the technology spread, it began to vanish. The records of massive sales stopped. The headlines in agricultural journals were replaced by the rise of synthetic fertilizers. Christofleau's name, once a fixture of innovation, was relegated to a footnote in garden history. Today we are told that to feed the world, we need complex chemicals and laboratory seeds. Yet the evidence of a different path is still hidden in plain sight. It's in the patent archives, it's in the giant vegetables of the 1930s, and it's in that hollow sound of your modern spare change. If you want to rediscover what was lost, start with the metal. Find the copper, find the zinc. The protocol is simpler than they want you to believe. 1. Source pure copper wire and zinc-coated steel. 2. Create a spiral of vortex to catch the atmospheric charge. 3. Ground the energy into your soil using a simple galvanic stack. We've been taught to look at the ground for growth, but Justin Christofleau knew the real power was always right above us, waiting to be harvested by the alchemy of the earth. Drop a penny on a wooden table and listen. If that coin was minted before 1982, it rings with the clear melodic signature of copper. It sounds like a bell, but drop a modern penny and you'll hear a flat, hollow thud. This isn't just a change in currency, it's a chemistry lesson disguised as spare change. Beneath that whisper-thin copper shell lies a zinc core, a dull gray time capsule. We were told this shift was about saving money, but in the world of Justin Christofleau, it was about something much deeper. It was the systematic removal of the tools required for electro-culture from the hands of the public. In 1918, while Europe was still clearing the smoke of the Great War, the British government formed the Electro-Cultural Committee. This wasn't a group of backyard tinkerers. These were Nobel laureates, Royal Society fellows, and elite physicists. They spent 18 years replacing chemical fertilizers with simple metal plates. Copper and zinc buried deep in the dark earth. Their findings were baffling. Wheat didn't just grow, it surged. Root crops doubled in size. Yields jumped by margins that defied the logic of weather or seed quality. The soil wasn't just dirt anymore, it was a galvanic battery pulsing with life. For a moment, it looked like nature's hidden electricity would become national policy. But then the record went silent. As the evidence became too powerful to ignore, the data vanished. A single stamp in red ink, not for publication, locked the truth in government archives. Thousands of pages of crop data were pulled from circulation, boxed up and forgotten. Only 2 copies survived the purge. To reclaim this lost science, you must understand the protocol. First source, pure copper, not the plated alloys found in modern hardware. Second, pair it with zinc to create a terrestrial battery. Third, place these elements in the soil, aligned with the magnetic north to tap into the Earth's natural current. This simple interaction creates a micropulse that unlocks the nutrient density of the soil, bypassing the need for the synthetic chemicals that replace this technology. We are told that the world is a place of scarcity, that we need industrial intervention to survive. But the history of 1918 suggests otherwise. The truth is hidden in plain sight, tucked away in your pocket. Scratch the surface of a modern penny and the gray zinc comes out. They took the copper away for a reason. It's time we start asking why. Drop a penny on a wooden table? If it's an old one minted before 1982, you'll hear a clear, bell-like ring, a signature of pure copper. But drop a modern coin and you get a flat, hollow thud. That's the sound of a zinc time capsule wrapped in a whisper-thin copper shell. It's a chemistry lesson disguised as spare change. But more importantly, it is a clue to a technology we were told to forget. In 1936, the British Electro-Cultural Committee vanished. No fanfare, no headlines. Just a quiet dissolution of decades of research. They claimed the science was no longer practical. The truth, it was too cheap to be profitable. That same year, the Haber-Bosch process began turning air into synthetic fertilizer by the ton. Giant chemical plants promised endless harvests, provided you had the money to pay for the powder. Industrial agriculture didn't need a free energy source powered by the weather and scrap metal. It needed a subscription model. So the reports were stamped, sealed, and buried. But the physics didn't change just because the funding did. When copper and zinc meet in damp earth, they create a galvanic battery. It's the same principle that powered Alexander Bain's Earth Battery in 1841. This isn't folklore, it's basic electrochemistry. The difference in their atomic makeup drives a steady current about 1.1 volts through the soil. It won't light a city, but for a plant, it's a revelation. Through a phenomenon called electrotropism, roots actually sense these electric fields. They don't just grow, they migrate. Root tips seek out the cathode, guiding themselves toward water and nutrients with surgical precision. The result is a root system that is denser, stronger, and more resilient than anything grown in dead soil. If you want to test what they buried in 1936, follow the protocol. First, source your materials. You need pure copper wire and a zinc-coated galvanized stake. Do not use modern alloys. The purity of the metal dictates the strength of the pulse. Second, the placement. Drive the zinc stake into the north side of your garden bed. This aligns the current with the Earth's natural magnetic flow. Third, the bridge. Spiral the copper wire around a wooden stake, creating an antenna, and connect it to the zinc base. You are no longer just a gardener. You are an alchemist tapping into a terrestrial device that has been waiting for you to remember it. They told us the Earth was a silent, empty vessel that needed chemicals to wake up. They were wrong. The Earth has a pulse. You just have to give it a wire. Drop a penny on a hardwood floor. Listen. If it's dated before 1982, it rings with the clear melodic signature of pure copper, a tiny bell echoing from a wealthier era. But drop a modern penny, and you'll hear a flat, hollow thud. It sounds cheap, because it is. In 1982, the US Mint didn't just change the composition of our currency, they created a zinc time capsule wrapped in a whisper-thin copper shell. To most, this was a simple economic move to combat inflation. But to those who understand the copper alchemy, these coins are not just dying currency. They are the components of a forgotten battery, a tool for a suppressed science called Electro-Culture. Here is the chemistry lesson hidden in your spare change. As that post-1982 zinc core begins to corrode, it doesn't just vanish. It slowly bleeds zinc ions into the earth. For a plant, this is pure fuel. Zinc is the biological trigger for tryptophan, the essential amino acid that governs auxin synthesis. Think of auxins as the plant's internal architect. They dictate the stretch of the stem, the swell of the fruit, and the deep aggressive reach of the roots. When this pathway stalls, growth stops. When it's supercharged, nature explodes. This isn't just garden folklore. In 2018, researchers in China proved that low-voltage galvanic cells, simple copper and zinc plates, boosted crop yields by nearly 30%. The plants weren't just larger, they were resilient. They possessed more vigorous root systems and an uncanny resistance to environmental stress. These modern instruments are finally echoing the wild results reported over a century ago by the visionary Justin Christofleau. He saw the Earth not as dirt, but as a terrestrial device. And you can replicate his work with the coins in your pocket. To begin, you need two distinct eras of history in your palm, one pre-1982 copper penny and one post-1982 zinc core penny. Follow this protocol for the Garden of Eden effect. First, take a scrap of sandpaper. Scour both coins until the bare metal is exposed, shining copper on one and the cold silver gray of zinc on the other. You must strip away the protective coating to let the soil's moisture complete the circuit. You have two paths. The ring method. Dig two small holes on opposite sides of your plant's root zone about 4 inches apart. Place the copper on one side and the zinc on the other. This spacing is critical. It's close enough for the electrical pulse to travel through the roots, but far enough to prevent a direct short circuit. The wire method. Wrap a length of bare copper wire tightly around a zinc penny, ensuring firm metal-on-metal contact. Bury this assembly near the base of the plant. The wire acts as an antenna, increasing the surface area and intensifying the galvanic current. No chemicals, no expensive gadgets. Just two metals, a little moisture, and a silent current feeding the soil's biochemistry. Scratch the surface of a penny, and the truth comes out. The solution to our modern agricultural fatigue isn't found in a laboratory. It's waiting in a handful of coins buried in a patch of dirt. Try it. Listen to the soil. The results will speak for themselves. Drop a penny on a wooden table. If it's from before 1982, you'll hear a bright metallic ring, a tiny copper bell echoing with the signature of a pure element. But drop a modern penny, and the sound dies instantly. A flat, hollow thud. This isn't just about cheap manufacturing. It's a chemistry lesson, disguised as spare change. Inside that whisper-thin copper shell lies a zinc time capsule, a hidden core that changed everything. Most people see a budget cut, but for those who understand the work of Justin Christofleau, they see something else, a suppressed technology hidden in plain sight. When this zinc core meets the moisture of the earth, it stops being currency and starts being a galvanic battery, a terrestrial device that whispers a tiny electrical pulse directly into the roots of your garden. This is electro-culture. It is the science of the invisible. But nature has limits, and so does the coin. To turn your garden into a living circuit, you must follow the protocol. 1 coin per plant. That is the rule. Doubling up doesn't double the growth. It risks an overdose of ions that can stall the very life you're trying to spark. Place the assembly 4 to 6 inches from the stem, right where the feeder roots are most active. Moisture is the key. Without it, the circuit stays open. The magic stays trapped. Like any battery, the penny eventually runs dry. The zinc is consumed, sacrificed to the soil. Keep a multimeter close. If the reading dips below 0.5 volts, the spark is gone. It's time to swap the old zinc for a fresh one. Watch the leaves. If they yellow, or if growth halts, the balance is off. Document the dates. Track the voltages. This isn't just gardening, it's an investigation into a lost era of agriculture. As fertilizer costs skyrocket and our food systems become more fragile, these forgotten methods are no longer just myths. They are survival. The soil beneath your feet holds electric secrets that have been ignored for decades, secrets that are now impossible to dismiss. The real question isn't whether this works. The question is, why was this knowledge buried in the first place? Sometimes the smallest coin can spark the biggest change. What have you noticed in your own soil? Let's talk in the comments.